I do demos all the time, and I have a very rich environment that I've been enhancing over the years with use cases and stuff, and that thing cannot fail me. What I'm going to be talking about here is mainly around Mac OS, but many of the things are applicable to Windows and Linux as well. When things go wrong, well, let's say that you make some configuration changes anywhere on your demo, and then the stuff stop working. The system do not comes up, or the demo is not exactly what you wanted. Another use case, another situation is when you do updates. So you update the operating system, and I use VMware Fusion, for example, and VMware Fusion stops working. How do I get back? I have to do a demo tomorrow. Flying here and there, so I cannot. I need to actually be able to get back to it. There's always the possibility of ransomware hitting you, right? And even though I don't do mail on this machine, for this demo machine, to avoid having another vector in there, still, I can click somewhere and my files can be compromised. How do I deal with that? Well, my strategy is based on the fact that internal hard drives that you buy are dirt cheap. They're very, very cheap. And I'm talking about a couple of dollars for a 2 terabyte drive. The problem is, okay, it's internal drive. How do you hook it into your Mac or this or that you're using? And for that, what I use the device, I think other people also call it like that, is a toaster. That I combine that with spinning hard drives, which are, again, dirt cheap, or SSD drives that are very inexpensive and that much faster. And I'll talk about the advantages of one another in what aspect of my demo strategy. Let me actually show you a picture of one of those toasters. So here's the toaster, and this is a top view, and this is an internal spinning hard drives, very inexpensive. Here's another one here. Here are some SSD. SSDs are 2.5 and these are 3.5. The cassettes, the toaster accepts them both, and you can mount them on a mountain. You go into Amazon, you find a ton of variation of these devices. So that is what is going to enable me to go into implement a strategy that has been very useful and has saved my bacon, as they say here in America, many, many times. The main environment that I do for demos uses VMware, and of course the VMware snapshots are my saving grace. Every time I finish doing a demo, I revert to my snapshot, and I know exactly where the machine is going to be when I do that. Now, a couple of things that I do when I'm taking my snapshot. The first thing that I do is I shut down the machine before I take the snapshot. Why is that? Well, several reasons. One is that you want it to be in a state that is actually very safe, and nothing is safer than the machine being completely down. But also it takes less space, less time to do the restore and the going back and forth between the snapshot. And I also have the practice of having one level of snapshot. I don't like that idea of having multiple snapshots. That thing has failed to me in the past, especially when you revert to, oh, this is 3 days ago, let me go back there, and then something breaks. Sometimes you are working on VMware and you change something on the amount of hardware that you are dedicating. You're giving more memory or more cores, and when the machine comes up, you get that ugly message of file whatever is missing. You cannot get back from it, and that's actually quite a mess. By the way I buy my VMware software is I have the VMware Fusion license, but when I want to do things like ESXi, for example, I want to use vSphere, but I have another system that I also run on that. I use an option of the VMware user group, in which I pay $200 per year and gives me access to all that software. Again, that's an option. But what happens when the VMware image is corrupted, is damaged? Again, I need to fly tomorrow. I need to restore from this thing. What do I do? Well, the second part of my strategy is using Carbon Copy Cloner. is the name of the software. Works extremely well on the Mac, and this guy really knows how the Mac works. But this takes the whole thing, operating system, Mac OS operating system, and all, everything that is on the machine is going to be backed up. The guy does a delta of everything that changes, and you can revert the entire machine into that. Basically, you put the carbon copy that you had made on the toaster, you reboot your Mac, you press the Option key, and then that hardware on the toaster is going to be identified as one of the options you can boot. You boot from that one, and your machine is back to where it was. Now you do a carbon copy processing, which you copy from your toaster into your internal drive, and you are back. Sounds scary, but the stuff has worked each and every time for me. Now, here's where when you are restoring that, and here's where an SSD obviously is going to be much faster than the spinning drive. If you can afford a spinning drive, go for it. But if not, and if you have the time to spend an hour or two getting your system restored, go back from it. My strategy is that I run Carbon Copy Cloner, but before I do that, and I turn my Wi-Fi off. I just want to make sure that this is not exposed to the internet ever. Is there a gap from it? So I turn Wi-Fi off. This is the only connectivity that the machine I have has. It doesn't have a physical cable. If you have a physical one, obviously unplug that one, so that this is actually protected. Once I do that, I run Carbon Copy Cloner, and when I use SSD, but when I use spinning drive, I let it run overnight, doing its thing. And there's an option, I'll show you that in the interface, that allows me to eject the actual hard drive and turn the machine off. When I come in the morning and I notice that there's no Wi-Fi, I remember that I did a backup. Before I turn the Wi-Fi on, I eject that carbon copy drive from the toaster and turn it off. That way I know that thing is my saving grace from anything that happens. Let me actually go into the interface of Carbon Copy Cloner. So here's the interface of the program. This is the source. This is my internal drive on the Mac Pro, and this is the toaster one. And when I run the backup, it does its things. And in advanced settings, I have it set up on the post flight to unmount the disk and turn the machine off. So that works like a charm. Again, when you are in the revert process, you bring the machine up, Option key, and then when the machine reboots, you run Carbon Copy Cloner, which is going to be running from the toaster, and then you do this process in reverse, and then you recover. Just because it is an external drive under Carbon Copy, that doesn't mean that you cannot go, as I'm going in here, and go to a specific directory or a VMware image that you want to restore or whatever. You don't have to restore the entire thing. You have it in there. Again, if you have it on SSD, it's going to be much faster than if you have it in spinning, but you have that data there. Now, let me talk about the third option, which is the time machine or time capsule. I don't know how Apple calls that. Also, before I do that, let me talk about encryption. Encryption is something that you may want to do regardless. If the information that you have on your system for backup is important, well, you can have these drives being encrypted by the Mac OS or Windows, whatever is the system, and then you don't have to worry about if those drives get misplaced, and nobody will be able to read those. Let's talk about the time capsule or time machine, whatever that's called. Well, this software is kind of cool because what it does is that every hour it takes a snapshot of the delta that happened on my machine. And this is done by Apple, and you can even restore from that one, by the way. If everything breaks, and you can boot the machine from the time capsule and revert to that previous snapshot. One thing that I do when I'm doing when the time capsule is running, I exclude the VMware files, because these are going to be changing quite a bit, and you don't want to, be having copies on it. Again, it's an option that you may decide to do, but you can make sure that the time capsule or time machine is not going to slow your system down at all. Right? And this is kind of a belt and suspender. All these levels, have guaranteed me over the years that my demo is always reliable, especially when I know that I have a flight that I need to go to the airport, that my flight departs at 6 a.m. I'm testing something, it doesn't work. I always have a way to get back to things. Let me actually get into the time capsule and show you the interface of it. So when I enter into the time machine, actually how Apple calls it, you get this good looking view in which you can go back in time, the day, the hours that you have, and you can go into a specific file that you say, oh, this is the file that I have. Let's say you were writing a Python program and you don't have version control, and you knew that this file was working, and now it's not working, the program. So you can go back to the time that you tested at, go there, actually click on it, and underneath here, you cannot see it on the screen, but there's a restore button that you can click on, and your file will be put exactly there. You can even click here on search and find the specific file. So again, if you follow any of a combination of these strategies, I hope that this serves you as well as it has served me, in which I have always been able to have a point where I can revert and always have my environment available.